today, as you can tell from the title of this video, we are going to be talking about if I regret buying my 2002 Subaru WRX, and the answer's kind of complicated. The short answer is no, kind of. So let's go over the list of bad things first. Number one being the gas mileage can always be better, but it's also kind of not what this car is meant for. So I think on average, I probably get somewhere between 18 and 22 miles per gallon day to day. Sometimes if I'm really trying to stretch out my gas tank and don't want to pay for gas for a while, I can get around 28 if I really try and, shift early and I'm not really, revving the car up that high or anything. A fear that I share, which I'm sure a lot of fellow Subaru WRX owners share, is the fear of the engine nuking itself. Now, you hear a lot of things about these cars having different problems with like their head gaskets. I'm sure everybody has a friend who has a WRX whose motor has blown before. I have some friends who have blown multiple motors before. So there's always that fear of the engine nuking itself. The flat 4 engine, it has a pretty bad rap, so there's always the fear of that. Oil issues. These cars tend to burn a lot of oil, and they also sometimes have oil leaks coming out of, like we said before, the head gaskets, or just in general, they seem to have a lot of issues with oil. Now, this one's kind of subjective to just me and not all Subaru WRXs, but the age of the car. So mine is a 2002. It's 21 years old right now. So being so old, sometimes it needs a little bit more attention that you wouldn't see in a newer car, so that can be a little bit more costly. Having to replace parts that the previous owner didn't replace. Since I got this car on Facebook Marketplace, people on there tend to not really take care of their stuff the best, so I end up being the one who has to pay for things and getting it back into tip-top shape. And speaking of which, this car did not have the best life before me. The previous owner didn't really do the most maintenance to it. I'm pretty sure he told me a story about how he had to replace all the suspension on this thing, and after that point he was done with it. So there was a lot of cleanup that I had to do for this car and a bunch of things I had to fix. Luckily, it wasn't that expensive, and things have been coming along over time of like the alternator or the battery or things wearing out, but all in all, really hasn't been that expensive. And that is where the good comes in. So good things: cheap maintenance. I have not really had to do that much maintenance to this car, like I said. I even have a whole video talking about this, but I haven't really had to do that much maintenance to this car. It's been pretty good to me. I haven't really had to replace anything too major or too expensive. I haven't gone through a motor yet, so that's pretty good. And whenever I have, I don't think the parts have really been that expensive. I feel like battery costs are pretty standard, alternator costs are pretty standard, spark plugs are a pretty standard cost. I had to buy an ignition coil, which I think is also a pretty standard cost, but I can't really think of anything that was like super expensive just for this car, which is kind of nice for owning a Japanese car, is sometimes you can get parts for a lot cheaper. Next up on the good list, I would say, is the driving experience. Now, being an older car, I feel like as you get into newer cars, the technology and the way that they build them is a lot more, the word I want to use is sturdy. So like whenever I used to have my Honda Accord, it was fast, relatively, if you would step on it. But the acceleration on that car is not the same as this car. It would feel a lot more stable, which also would make you not feel like you're accelerating that hard. Whereas in a car like this, that's kind of older, it's more of like a raw experience. The engine's loud, there's not that much soundproofing. And whenever you give it the gas, you can actually feel yourself move in the car seat and the whole entire car. Just the experience of driving it, I feel like, is a lot better. It is a small but pretty roomy sports car. As you can see, you got room for all your friends. I would even go as far to say that the trunk is pretty large if you don't have a giant subwoofer in the back. The next thing that I would say is this car is an eye catcher. I travel around a lot, whether that's to work, to the gym, to pick up parts for this thing, go visit family, things like that. And usually just about anywhere that I go, specifically in my part of Pennsylvania or just in Pennsylvania in general, there's not a lot of people who have a 2002 WRX. So when people see it, they like to compliment it. So for example, last week, whenever I was at work, I was leaving and someone complimented my car and said, wow, it's a really cool WRX driver. This actually happened 3 days in a row last week where someone complimented me outside the gym, whenever I was at AutoZone, and another time at work. So this car is an eye catcher. Being an older WRX, I feel like sometimes can do that. And also I feel like the 2002 model is becoming a little bit more rare, and I feel like maybe they're also not sought after as much as the newer models. The next one is that Subaru rumble, baby. Can't get enough of it. The good part about having the flat 4 engine is that it produces a really nice rumble noise that everyone can notice from a mile away. And the last thing that I would say is that this car has a really good community around it. There's black sheep in every car community that make it not as nice to be in, but I feel like in general, a lot of people in the WRX community are here to help. If you have problems, they're always there to provide advice and different things to help you out. Anytime I pass a Subaru, I always throw up a wave and they throw one right back. If they don't, I just start laughing because I'm like, oh my God, that was embarrassing because everybody else just saw me wave and no one waved back. But the community is really nice. Even if I meet people like going to a gas station or something and they're also driving a Subaru WRX, they toss me a compliment. I'll toss them one back, you know, because usually they got a pretty cool car. But everybody's just so supportive and they just want to see everyone succeed. So over the past 2 years of owning this car, it's really been the best experience that I've had. I've preached this before, but I feel like the way that you take care of your car is the way that it takes care of you. So if you take care of doing the maintenance to your car and stuff, it won't leave you stranded. I'm sure there's a point where you reach where it's like you're doing too much to the point where, you know, you're not getting your cost worth of it. But I feel like in general with most of my vehicles that I've owned, if you take care of them, they'll take care of you. And so far, I've taken pretty good care of this car. It hasn't left me stranded anywhere. It has had some pretty big hiccups, but in that time period, I was neglecting it. Like before, I was having a lot of battery problems, and my car's lights, like the dash lights and the radio and everything, would start flickering and having problems. But after replacing the alternator, because I was neglecting it for a little bit, it treated me perfectly fine. Whenever I was having battery problems, replaced the battery. I had the alternator problems for longer because I neglected it. So like I said, the quicker that you tackle these problems and also do them on time or even preventative maintenance, I feel like shines through over anything that I've said so far in this video. So like I said, my answer to the question of this video is no, kind of. There's some things I've had to deal with, some things that I gripe about with this car, but overall, it has been an amazing experience to drive. I wouldn't trade it for anything else. I don't feel like I'm going to be selling this car. One, because I don't exactly know if it's going to be worth anything by the time I go to sell it. And also, I kind of feel like it's grown a special place in my heart as one of the cars that I've loved to have, kind of like my Jeep. I always wanted to buy another one. I think in the future, I want to buy another one. And modify it just like how my Jeep was, just because I miss it so much, and I think I'm growing that same bond with this car. But that's all that I got for you guys in this video today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all your guys' support on these videos recently. You've been crushing it. I can't believe that we're at the subscribers that we're at. Speaking of subscribers, if you don't mind going down and hitting that button, I'd really appreciate it. But that's all that we got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.